You're listening to WBAI 99.5 FM here in New York City. And what I'm keeping running with the theme of 1922, although the song I'm going to play now about James Connolly being shot in a chair. There seems to be a running theme between Pat O'Donnell being hung. James Connolly was shot in a chair in 1916. But this is by the Wolf Tones. We come out of that and talk about a working class hero. We're going to have on Larkin Otway to give us the latest update on the court case that he had last week, trying to save Theater 80 and keep it at 80 St. Mark's Place, and to keep him and Jeannie in his home at St. Mark's Place. But this is one of the best songs to come out of 1916, James Connolly by the Wolf Tones. So we go from the walls of Kilmainham to St. Mark's Place, one of the most famous streets in all of New York City, and particularly the address of 80 St. Mark's Place. And we speak with Larkin Otway, who's been a guest many times over the years and decades here at WBAI. And you could say he's a casualty of COVID and the cruelty of the courts and the cruelty of the city shutting down the theaters and shutting down bars, and then telling you, well, you still got to pay property tax, you still got to pay insurance, you still got to pay inspectors, you still got to pay. And there was a court case this week. You might remember the New York Times did a full page on this. New York One with Roger Clark did live from Theater 80. But Larkin, what is the latest court decision that came down last week?
Well, exactly. And, when you're speaking to the Irish Rep Company and they're talking about the cost of 10 days of shutdown, we've suffered 2 years of shutdown of our theater, our museum, our bed and breakfast. Much of that time, the tavern was shut down or heavily restricted. And so what happened was, because of government action, which I supported, I think we needed to keep the city safe, we were offered no protection against a predator buying our debt, and in less than a year and a half, bringing our debt from $6 million to $9.3 million. And now the decision of the court is that I have 2 weeks to raise $11 million, where they will oversee the selling of my building, my theater, my home, and everything I own. We will literally be on a park bench poor. And at the end of the day, I lay that at the feet of this government, that we were given no protections. And I'm not here to talk about the justice of that, or whether or not this is an example of Chicago Economic School jurisprudence that has, even Posner, who was the dean of that ideal, has repudiated in his book of The Failure of American Capitalism, that kind of decision has transferred all the benefits of the New Deal, all the benefits of the Great Society program, to a handful of millionaires and billionaires at the cost of the power of working America to own their country, to own the country we built. And we are, at the moment, as I said, not going to go into depth on the justice or lack thereof, but what we need to do about it, we need to find people who care that working class culture like your play, like the Negro Ensemble Company, and high culture like the Manhattan Symphony Orchestra, who perform here, has a place in this city, that American theater isn't all Disney and Schubert and Niederlander. And for that, we need angels. We need somebody to say, our naming rights, the branding on our building has been assessed at being worth $500,000 a year. Some individual or company saying, I want to put my name on that building for 10 or 20 years, because we need to lower the value of the loan against the value of the building. What happened was that during this past year and a half, Maverick Real Estate has inflated the debt to the point that it is virtually impossible to get a refinance, because the reason they've done that is so that they could get, for a $6 million investment, they could basically steal a $15 million business that for, 58 years my family and I worked on it. When I was 9 years old, coming home from school, and doing the construction with my father to build this place. My wife and I, since 2004, taking not a single day off, working 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, to serve the cultural needs of this community. And we need someone to realize that seniors in America should not be given a park bench for that dedication to culture.
I know after the New York Times article came out, you were in touch with, say, city council, and then you were in touch with state people and federal people. There was nothing that any of these different, platforms of government could do?
The great Brad Holman, and he is truly a strong advocate for working class America, went to Governor Hochul, and I have a lot of faith in her because she's from the Monterey, and as people know, I apprenticed as a boat builder there, and the sensible part of Ireland. And he asked her, he said, Lorcan isn't asking for a handout. He's asking for the state to guarantee a low-interest loan to put him certainly more in debt, but in the position that I was in before COVID. And she turned him down and instead gave $846 million to a billionaire to build a stadium in Buffalo. If you could think of how many New York theaters and restaurants and small businesses could have been saved by loans from the government, and that money would come back. Because the fact of the matter is, in the 10 years before COVID, I grew this business by 800%. So we're not a bad risk. But instead, she gave a gift to a billionaire instead of helping the working class in America. And I think that endangers the Democratic Party's ability to hold on to the governorship in these days that we need Democratic governors and senators and congressmen. The other person who has been immensely helpful, but again, we're up against a court and a government that does not care, is Carlina Rivera, who, our local council person, has been so activist. She also went to had a meeting with the governor to ask for help for us.
Well, Lorcan, I know you had filed for bankruptcy in there, but why is it that they're allowed to go into your apartment, look at chairs, beds, and everything, and say that you cannot, just say that they take over the building, and when you leave, you're not allowed to take anything in the apartment with you?
Yeah, we'll see. What Maverick has done in the past is they have sold very likely to Confederates for less than the value of the loan. That way, I'm personally responsible to make up the difference in the debt. And the other obscenity in this is that I will owe capital gains tax, which means Jeannie and I will be in a group dorm in a city shelter with, the hell of the New York City shelters. Most people would rather walk down subway tracks than be in shelters. And we would be paying unbelievable amounts of tax to the government that bankrupted me. And I find that an obscenity.
And the other thing, Lorcan, about you, I mean, every time I call you, you're never off a Zoom call, because you're constantly working Zoom and the phone call. And even this morning, I called you at 7 in the morning, and there you were opening up the place to an AA meeting. I mean, you talk about helping the community. I'm sure these vulture capitalists coming in, they're going to be worried about AA meetings.
Let's just mention that it's a meeting.
Okay. All right.
We don't out anyone for whatever the meeting was. We do have a community meeting that meets here on the weekend. I used to, with some glee, tell my mother we have a 100% demographic because we also have the bar and tavern. But you're right. The fact is we're a commercial theater, and yet we provide space to every issue in the community when they need it, and whether they could pay or not. And we're proud of our record. We had on the subject of Ukraine, we had 2 plays in one season, both of which were Ukrainian nationalists, but were divided on the issue of Yulia Tymoshenko and her corruption. And the 2 audiences picketed each other. And that's the kind of transformative theater that we need to keep the people informed. And the Negro Ensemble, they had their funding cut. And I said, I don't know how we're going to pay for this. but come and do your 50th season here. And among the plays they did was The Soldier's Story. And within 2 years, it was being performed on Broadway because of the reviews that they got here. And it gave me an opportunity to say goodbye to some very important people in my life growing up at the Negro Ensemble Company next door up the block where they started, Doug Turner Ward and Charles Weldon, who both died since, who were champions of American theater and socially transformative culture. And we had 6 of the original 13 members of the company perform that year in their 80s and 90s works that shaped American theater, but more than that, shaped American justice during Day of Absence back when this was still an apartheid nation. And it's the kind of theater, in these days, we have become an ungovernable nation, and I don't think that the solutions are political. I think they're cultural. We need to start talking to the hearts again. And without theaters, if all we have is Broadway, you are not, certainly anyone who saw the most recent Broadway production of To Kill a Mockingbird knows that this is not socially transformative theater. When Sorkin's message was that lying is all right if you're right, that in other words, truth is related to power, which was absolutely contrary to the meaning of the play and the film, which is about truth and judicial discretion. And in these days when we need people to come back to truth in their seeking justice in this country, that we need to cut through the lies, and you're not going to have that from the same culture that has been taking this country from those who produced culture that transformed the nation.
Well, Larkin, we're going to have to wrap up here, and I thank you for coming on, and we'll have you back on next Sunday, and hopefully there'll be some changes in the works, but who knows, and we'll see what happens. God
willing. So you can look up Theater 80 on Facebook and Theater 80 at historic80stmarksplace.net, and if anybody has a solution out there. And I have to say that the struggle has brought out so many parasites who are just trying to take the theater from us.
Yeah.
But we're looking for angels.